This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Start off with, we'll do our hydro program overview by request. This portion is we'll talk about the hydro products. We've broken the training into two sessions, so this will be the product session, and then another session next month will cover some tools and techniques for heavy rain events. So what I'll do with this presentation is provide an overview of the bulletin progression with all the different sequence of the different products that you would issue during a heavy rain and flood event. And then I'll spend some time going over the details as you're composing the product, the type of information that you want to include and some of the nuances that go along with each of the different products. And then I'll spend a little bit of time on the basis statement and additional detail statements that you have for your watches, warnings, and advisories. And then we'll have just a couple of additional items at the end, and then I'll summarize, of course. Eric Jacobson is on the line too, and there should be some time at the end for him to cover some nuances with your new HACCP format, your formatter in GFE based on our switch to the new hazard simplification format especially for watches and advisories. So we should have time at the end. Okay, so talking about the bulletin progression, starting with an idealized long lead time situation. So let's just say that your models are providing a lot of heads up and they're consistent, so you're fairly confident that the big rain event's going to be coming up. You could issue a hydrologic outlook, and this is for the 2 to 4 day time frame. And this is when you're anticipating a significant rain event and potential flooding to be hitting the Samoa Islands. And the intent here is to provide the public and your key customers a heads up that something significant is approaching over the next 2 to 4 days. Now, as you get closer to the event, and it's really starting to look like you're going to have an event that's going to produce flooding that's a threat to life and property, and within a 2 day time frame, then you could issue a flood watch. And emphasis here is on preparation. The event hasn't started yet, and so you're not really expecting people to react necessarily. It's just that you want folks to be aware and to take whatever precautions or do whatever preparations that they need to do in order to mitigate impacts from the potential flooding that's going to be coming in. Now, once the rain event starts, and is there a question?
Yes. Oh, yeah, we have a question, Kevin, please.
Okay.
For the hydro outlook, the 2 to 4 days, what do you say about the confidence level? Like, if all the conditions are there from the model data and whatnot, 2 to 4 days out, and we put the outlook out, and then things change when it gets to those days, is that okay? Or do you just suggest that we just not put out an outlook? Because we actually experienced that in a recent event where the models were really good. Both EC and GFS were really good with they were very consistent with that solution, giving us flash flooding conditions. And then the day of, or it just didn't happen the way it was hyping it up to be. What are
we go with a 50% confidence level. Now, once you hit the 2 day time frame, then you kind of have to make a decision on whether or not you keep it out or you transition over to a flood watch. It shouldn't be where the hydro outlook is all issued or in effect all the way until the day of the event. because
Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, you know, if you hit the 2-day time frame, and conditions no longer look like it, you know, you're going to have significant rainfall and flooding, then you can just cancel it. Just, you know,
Oh,
cancel the
okay.
outlook. Yeah.
Oh,
And
so for the Outlook, you do have to update it, or it's not issued one time. It's like one of
yeah,
those
it's
recurring. Okay.
yeah, every 12 hours. And I'll cover
Okay.
all the details so this is just an overview. So I'll cover
Okay.
all those kinds of specifics as we go along.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
just
you.
providing a progression on it. Yeah.
All
Um,
right. Awesome.
so if the rain event starts and the flooding you're getting reports that, you know, it's life-threatening flooding or it's really significant flooding, it's having impacts, then you would go out with a warning. And if you have any type of information, you know, impact information, you would include that in flash flood statement. Now, the event can start off slower. You know, you could have heavy rain, but it's only producing minor impacts. You just have some ponding, you know, just maybe streams coming up, but it's not yet causing any problems. Then you would issue a flood advisory. But then if the flooding gets worse, then of course you can switch over to a flash flood warning as needed. Now with the flash flood warning, you know, since 2019, we started using the impact-based warning format. So now you have different levels of warnings that you can send out. So most cases you're going to have what's called a base level warning, which has no tags attached to it. You know, that's going to be for, you know, you might have a road closed, you know, isolated impacts, but you know, it's not expected to be, you know, really bad. You know, most cases you're just going to have a base level event, so that's no tags attached to it. Now, if it gets worse and you're having significant impacts that, you know, are of the life-threatening variety, you have multiple roads closed, you know, you have vehicles getting stalled in flooded waters, and you know, emergency response has to go out and rescue folks from stranded cars, and you could upgrade it to a considerable level event. And then if it's even worse for those really rare cases where you have swiftwater rescues ongoing, you have homes being destroyed, widespread impacts, then you could go with a catastrophic level event, which would also be called flash flood emergency. So, but those are really, they should be reserved for your, you know, really rare cases. Sometimes you're not going to have the ideal long lead progression. Just, you know, you may have been expecting, you know, just some rain, but not expected to be really bad, maybe a flood advisory type condition. But sometimes, hey, the heavy rain starts and it sticks, and it starts to cause flooding that's a threat to life and property. So you would just, you know, you have to go out with a flash flood warning. And the emphasis there is, you know, forget about preparation. It's too late for preparation. You take whatever actions you need to do to get safe, and then we would update those again with the flash flood statement. Or it could start off with minor flooding, heavy rain producing minor flooding, and then it you know, transitions, it gets worse, and then we would have to transition over to a warning. And again, you know, the same 3 tiers for the different tags will apply under the impact-based warning format. So go into more details about the different products. So starting with the hydrologic outlook. So, you know, this is really intended to be a heads-up product for the public and the emergency management community and any of your key partners, such as the media. Again, it's a 2 to 4 day lead time, and the event confidence is we use a 50% or greater threshold. It tends to be we use this as it's a broad brush product. So like, for example, at HFO, when we issue a hydrologic outlook, at a minimum, it would cover 2 counties, so at least half the state. But most of the time when we issue a hydro outlook here, it covers the entire state. We limit it to the 4-day lead time, because beyond that there's so much uncertainty, and there's kind of diminishing returns when the lead time is too long, even if you, for whatever reason, you might be really confident. Although I think it's pretty hard to be greater than 50% confident of a significant event beyond 4 days. There's just too much uncertainty with QPF that far out. So I wouldn't, our policy, our regional policy is no longer than, don't go beyond 4 days. The update cycle would be every 12 hours for this. And, in the product itself, we would highlight the uncertainty involved, to say, hey, we're seeing models are showing that there may be a heavy rain event and potentially significant flooding, out, day 2 to day 4, but, there's uncertainty, so stay tuned. Now, once you get within the 2-day time frame, you have to make a decision. If the threat is still there, then you would replace that with a watch, and you would issue a final outlook to say the outlook has been superseded by the flood watch. Or the other option is, if there's no longer a threat, or it's not that significant anymore, then you would just drop you would issue a final outlook saying the threat no longer exists. But I think in several cases you can easily transition over to a flood watch once you get within the 2-day time frame. So I don't know, this might be small, but just kind of highlighting what a hydro outlook looks like. So you'd have a headline saying what the threat is. So in our case, in this example, Hurricane Lane bringing the potential for heavy rains and flash flooding this week. So in the body, it's a free format text, and we're just talking about what we're looking at. Forecast from CPAC indicates that tropical cyclone will move close to the islands and so forth. But we're you want to put it, emphasize. You don't want to be specific at all in this. You're just saying that there's a chance for widespread rainfall across the Samoan Islands or something like that. You don't want to get specific on timing. You don't want to get specific on location. You're just trying to give a heads up, and you want to emphasize uncertainty at this point. And then the bottom 2 paragraphs here is just saying that where you can get additional information and when the next product will be issued. So as you get within the 2-day time frame, you would then issue a flood watch. So for you folks out in American Samoa, cases where you could have a flood watch issued would be, of course, you have a tropical cyclone approaching, or if you have this South Pacific convergence zone expected to move over your islands. You may have a trough, upper trough over you, or surface trough, or, any one of those significant synoptic features. And then, of course, if the models, your GFS or EC, or the high res, if out at the long lead time portion of it, if it's indicating that you're going to have significant precip over your area, then you could use that as guidance for the watch. Similar to the outlook, the watch is updated every 12 hours, and you would need to issue updates on the watch whenever there are changes, such as if you're expanding the aerial coverage of the watch, or if the effective time changes, meaning that initially you were expecting it right at 2 days, but maybe you're seeing some guidance saying that it's actually might come in sooner. Or for instance, a tropical cyclone, let's say that might be a good example. If you issued it right at the 2-day time frame, but the tropical cyclone speeds up and the threat is actually earlier, then you could issue an update at that point. Or if you have any changes to the expected impacts, although that'll be that may be less common. And then, of course, if you cancel or allow to expire the watch, then that would be another watch issuance. So on the format with the new HAZCIMP format, as far as the coverage, you're probably going to issue this pretty broad brush. You're going to cover multiple islands, probably if not your whole CWA. You want to include a leading overview headline in there at the top. So ... heavy rain or flood watch issued for Tutuila, Aunu, and maybe Ta'u and Ofu or something like that, or maybe all the Samoan Islands, whatever. Just kind of putting an overview up there, and amongst your bulleted statements. So there's now with the HAZCIMP format, it's gone to a what, where, when format. First bullet will just say, flash flooding caused by excessive rainfall is possible. That should be the default, and you probably wouldn't need to change this. Now the second bullet, where, you want to include the islands that are affected by the watch. This is the where, meaning not where the system is, but where the affected area is. So this is where you put the affected islands. When, the third bullet, will be the time frame of the watch. So you could say, through late Friday night or something like that, through Friday afternoon, something like that. And the impacts, this is where you put the potential impacts. Eric may be able to answer this. I can't remember if we had put this in, but have a default impact statement in there.
We did, yes.
Okay, good. And then the fifth bullet is where you'd probably be putting a lot of your composition effort. You're describing why the watch is issued, such as the meteorological conditions. You have the tropical cyclone approaching, or trough moving over the area, or active monsoon period, or something like that. You could add value to the product. You want to tell people what you know. Maybe the islands have had a lot of rainfall recently, so you can talk about, ground is already saturated, so the risk of flooding is greater. You can put in some nuances on timing. So for instance, even though you have the watch out over the next 2 days, you can say that, just put a brief statement in there that the chance of, the most likely period of rainfall is, Thursday night or something like that. You can put in what you know based on your guidance. Now for us, we can emphasize, for instance, rainfall is expected to be heaviest along windward slopes, but maybe it's a little tougher for you folks. But you can add in whatever value at this time frame with, but and just want to caution you about being too deterministic, too specific. Because there's still a fair amount of uncertainty at this point. For the watch, it's also a 50% threshold. So it's you don't want to say that things are, you don't want to put in too much specificity in it if you don't know what it is yet, or have the skill for it. So just again, the emphasis with the watch is preparation. I just noticed the chat in here that Hans had asked. He said that this goes back to the Hydro Outlook. So can the Hydro Outlook be extended due to model change or delay? After the initial issuance, I guess once you get, I guess maybe you're saying that maybe if it keeps going like it hangs out at the 3 day, 3 days from now. Yeah, you could do that as long as your updates state that, just say, hey, it's the expected onset has changed. But I guess at some point, you want to you kind of want to make a decision on. You don't want to just keep having outlooks issued forever, because then you run the risk of the public getting numb to it. So that's why we kind of save the outlook for pretty big events. On average, maybe HFO might issue one a year. We can go years where we don't have any issued, because sometimes if you issue too many hydro outlooks and they don't pan out, then you start, people start tuning that out. So we kind of save those for pretty big events. And for instance, tropical cyclones approaching where the guidance is tightly packed, where it's a lot more, we're more confident on it. Or sometimes we get these big Kona lows that come by, and models are all lined up pretty good. But that's, I haven't seen a situation where we've kind of kept delaying it. We just kind of make a decision, and also because we save it for the bigger events, we haven't had it where we just decide that, hey, it's not panning out, so we just cancel it, and we've never had to keep extending it.
Kevin.
Sorry, was there a question? Yes.
Yeah, it's Hans. Thanks for answering that. So can we start with the watch instead of the outlook then?
I mean, yeah, if you don't have the confidence to put out an outlook, and you're at the 2 day point, then certainly you can just go out with a watch. And I would say most of our heavy rain events here at HFO, we start out with a watch. We issue a lot more watches than we do outlooks, put it that way. And
okay.
Yeah, so if you're not real confident of it, you can wait. Like sometimes that's the decision making process we go through. We think, hey, is this worth? Do we want to go out with an outlook now? So no, we can wait. See what the next model runs say, and there's no problem if you don't have the confidence level with just starting out with a watch. That's totally fine in my mind.
Okay. Thank you.
There's another question in here for the what bullet in the watch. Is there another reason for that portion other than excessive rainfall? I don't think so for us, in Pacific region. Like on the mainland, you can have possible ice jam flooding, other types of issues, or for rivers, things like that. Like for us, it's just going to be flash flooding. This was a part of a consolidation of products. So the flood watch would be issued for river flooding, for ice jam flooding, all these other things. But for us, Pacific region, we just have flash flooding. So the what bullet will pretty much be limited to, it'd be flash flooding caused by excessive rainfall.
So we can just have that, like Eric, just have that there without having it in red because it never changes for us?
Yeah, for the AWIPs, because it's like we have to fill that part in. So it'll save us 0.01 second.
Yeah, I was gonna address that too. That sounds like a good idea. And we could either leave it in red, but have it pre-typed in, stuff like that. Also, I will just add that I misspoke. We did not pre-populate impact. So if that's another thing that we could potentially do for the flash flood watch, and that saves you all some time. I just wanted to correct myself, Kevin. We did not do that for the watch. We did for the advisory. So.
Okay, and I can send you.
When we filled that portion out, it was usually caused by a trough.
Yeah, like we were trying to figure out, like, okay, what's this part other than heavy rainfall?
Okay.
Well, it's good to know about the others.
I can send Eric, the impact statement that we use, or suggested impact statement. Now you can edit that, as you should be able to edit that as needed. So I mean, what we do is we have we have 3 different impact levels. You know, most of the time it's going to be like a base level type event. But you know, sometimes, like let's say you're expecting a tropical cyclone where the flooding potential could be pretty big, then we can adjust that as necessary. But you know, even with the base level event, you should be able to adapt it or edit it for specific situations. So, but I think it'll definitely help if you have a CAN statement that's already loaded in, and that can definitely save time for you folks. And then it'll also help with product consistency as well.
Okay, thank you, Kevin, and thank you, Eric, for helping out.
Yeah, we will, we do hope to move forward with CAN statement options for us. I know that was always a request to Eric, and now the new Eric. We have a spreadsheet of all the different CAN statements we would like to have available in English and Samoan. Just letting you guys know we've been working on those.
Okay.
Great. Yeah, I don't want to steal too much of Kevin's time, but that was going to be one thing I addressed at the end, is that I'm very much open to, if you want to send those along and we can start collaborating on pre-populating some of these, because I know you do have some more fields to fill out now. So yeah, let's work on that.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much.
So that was for the new Eric as opposed to the old Eric?
You can come too.
No, I'm just teasing the old Eric.
Old Eric.
So this is what the new HASM format looks like. So again, at the top, your leading statement. Again, the what, flash flooding caused by excessive rainfall is possible. Where this is a Hawaii example, obviously, but we issue it for entire islands. Most of the time, we have the option of putting in like sides of the island, like the windward side, but that's very rare and not always encouraged. At most of the time, we broad brush it for entire islands. This is in this case through late Monday afternoon, and this is the impact statement. So this is the base level impact statement that I would send over to Eric, new Eric. Just talking about the types of impacts that you might be expecting. Significant flooding may occur due to the overflow of streams and so on. And we can scale these up based on the severity of the expected event. And then the additional details, again, this is where you're going to put a lot of your effort into the composition. You're talking about providing added value, beyond just saying flash flooding is possible. I mean, we know more than that, and we want to let the public and your emergency management and key partners know. So in this case, we're talking about deep tropical moisture coming in, produce thunderstorms over the Big Island, Maui County. We put some nuances on the timing. So in this case, as early as tonight, but very likely by Sunday night. And just talking about, slow moving, heavy rainfall that can lead to flash flooding. So this is where you put the details of the event. So again, this impacts, and then you're going to put a lot of time and effort more into this last bullet. The additional details section used to be the third bullet in the old format. Was the basis statement. So now it's moved a little bit down to the fifth bullet. So again, keep in mind that when you do outreach for the watch, you want to let people know that conditions, significant flooding may not arrive for another day or two, and it could be a very nice day, but in fact, the perfect time to prepare is now when conditions are good. So you don't want, and they could quickly transition over to something more significant, within the next 2 days. So that's what we're trying to emphasize at this point. I would say that the flood watch is more valuable than the flash flood warning because of the amount of lead time it provides. Now, nationally, they track, verification branch in the Weather Service tracks and scores us on things like flash flood warning lead time and probability of detection of flash flood warnings. And they don't really, keep track of the scores on the watch. But, for us in Pacific region, and especially us here in Hawaii, I consider the watch to be more valuable than the warning because our events happen quickly. A lot of times and this is the same, in fact, maybe in Samoa, the basin reaction times are even shorter than Hawaii because your basins are really small. And so, by the time the event onset occurs, people are just in reaction mode. And so if you have a watch, you can actually provide your customers, usable lead time. And so even though not all watches verify, I think it's provides, a valuable service. So, you don't, of course, you don't want to go out too many times you don't want to issue watches for every little reason, right? But then, if you have some confidence of a significant event occurring, if you're at that 50% threshold, then definitely go out with a watch, because I think the additional lead time that it provides, is certainly valuable for the users out there. And in Hawaii, and I don't know about how Temco reacts to these products, but here they can take a lean forward posture, they can do some mitigation actions, pre-position equipment. They can post warning signs on hiking trails. Sometimes they actually close trails to prevent people from going, and that's based on the watch. And so it does have a lot of value. Was there a question? Okay, going out to the warning.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, Nathaniel, we were just wondering, how do they verify a flood watch?
Who's they? You talking about us or national?
National.
They don't verify on a watch. It's not part of the metrics. The warnings are verified off of impact reports. So it's things that go into your LSRs or anything that goes into storm data. So if you have roads washed out, bridges washed out, homes being damaged, that kind of thing, roads closed, that's all part of the warning verification. But flood watches, as far as I know, they're not part of the national verification. Like we do internally, like I keep track of watch verification. So if there's a flood impact, that anything that would verify a flash flood warning, I consider that to be a flood watch verification point. And we average about 36 hours. Just looking at long term over the years, we average about 36 hours lead time on our watches. Of course, some can be very short term. Some can go at right up to 48 hours. But on average, we get about a day and a half lead time. So that's that's when you compare that to the warning lead times that you can get, which is less than an hour. A day and a half is it's usable. People can do things with 36 hours heads up. So I consider the watch to be valuable. And this philosophy is not common across the Weather Service. I do know that there are some offices that kind of treat flood watches more like severe thunderstorm watches. So it's very much shorter time frame that they would issue. So rather than go out 2 days, they prefer to see something that's more has higher confidence. So like no more than 6 hours. And that's, of course, I'm not going to say that's right or wrong. It's just different. it's you know, they have different requirements wherever they are, but for us, you know, we go with the two-day time frame. Now with the warnings, if you would issue a flash flood warning for any flooding that's considered to be a threat to life and property. So this would include, like, if you have reports of property damage, or if you have public road closures, or anytime you have a stream or river that's come out of its banks, or it's washed out, or it's going over a bridge, that would be considered to be valid, a valid impact. Now, if you have ponding, that's a little trickier, but you know, if you have deep and rapid ponding, so deep meaning about 3 feet or more, or if the ponding is actually causing property damage, then that could be, you know, that's worth a warning. Now for us, you know, this is not a hard and fast rule because, you know, not all intense rainfall will necessarily produce impacts, just depends on where it's occurring.
Go
But
ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, we Dora unmuted us early. No, but we were trying to for the 3 hours update. Is there a plus? You know, like especially for overnight when we know that from satellite we're expecting more additional rain, and we want to not alarm the public with our NOAA weather radio alerts. And I know that with flash flood warnings for the basic, you don't do the NOAA weather the alarm. However, for American Samoa and Terralia, there is no code. So the flash flood warning is a flash flood warning. So
Okay.
we have to sound the tones every time we renew it. So is there flexibility with us, just like we can issue it at maybe 10 p.m. and knowing that the conditions are really bad overnight, we'll keep it for like 6 hours or so?
That, you know, yeah, that's that can be your local policy. Now for us, we worked it out with, you know, based on what our Hawaii emergency managers have requested. They prefer the 3-hour updates, but by national policy, you can go out longer than that.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, in your situation, that's definitely understandable. If you coordinate with your emergency management folks and they're okay with it, then yeah, you can go longer than 3 hours. Local policy for us is, you know, 3-hour update, and we've asked them, it's like, hey, would you rather go 6 hours? They said no, they like having that repeat hits. So but yeah, it's not like it's a hard and fast rule, so you can, you know, as
Okay.
needed. But yeah. So this is, you know, the different I talk about impact-based warnings and the different level tags, but it sounds like for us, the big thing with IBW is that it differs in the dissemination. So, and it's mainly with the wireless emergency alerts. So that'll be your mobile phone alerts. And when you issue a base level flash flood warning, then it does not trigger WEA, your mobile phone alert. But it does, base level events do trigger EAS and, you know, weather radio. And then considerable and catastrophic tags, they trigger everything. So your wireless emergency alerts and your EAS and then your weather radio. But it sounds like, you know, for you folks, there's no difference. So it would be, everything would be triggered anyway. But, you know, for us, I mean, the wording of the product will change too. So even though the dissemination may not change, I think it's still valuable to have the different levels in there for you folks, where, you know, base level event would be kind of like your, you know, quote unquote routine warning events. But you can now, with the considerable tags, it's more severe, and, you know, more actions are required. Than, of course, for the really bad events, then it would be catastrophic and the warning would be labeled as a flash flood emergency. So this is small, but I'm going to zoom in on it. So in this case, a base level warning, and with the IBW format, it's not a what, where, when format. It's hazard source impact. But again, with the base level event, you don't have a tag. But I guess it doesn't matter for you folks. So I'm going to zoom in to this portion, which is the meat of it. So the warning, the first bullet is where it's in effect for. So in this case, it would be like Tutuila and Onu or something like that. Second bullet is your expiration time. Third bullet is the basis information, which is why the warning has been issued. So I know this one says radar. Folks don't have radar, unfortunately, but you might say rain gauge is indicated, or you had public reports, or Hans said that the road is closed out to his house, or something like that. This is where you put that information in there. Hazard source impact. This is meant to make the important information easily identifiable. So you would say hazard, and for most cases, for you folks, it should say flash flooding caused by heavy rain, because again, weather service wide, there's a wide range of different types of potential hazards out there. But for us, it's mainly flash flooding caused by heavy rain. So this could be filled in. It could be a static thing. Source could be radar. Well, not radar indicate for you folks, but rain gauges, or police or emergency management as a source of that information. Impacts, this is similar to the watch impacts. We can have this set up as a canned statement that if needed, you can edit, but for the most part, shouldn't have to be. I can't remember, I thought your IBW formatter has this in there already, but I can't remember. I can't remember yesterday sometimes, so I don't remember what was put in in 2019. And the fourth bullet, this is the impacted locations. Now for us, with AWIPS, we can designate a polygon, and then all the locations get pulled into here. But for you folks, this is really the fourth bullet is an optional bullet. So since you tend to broad brush your product, cover the whole island, so you don't really need this unless you want to highlight specific flood risk areas. That is an option that you could put in if you so desire. So again, this is the can part, and oops. And we can, if we haven't already put in the different options for like base level impacts, considerable level impacts, and catastrophic level impacts, we can definitely put that in. I say that like we can put in. I can ask Eric that type of wording, and then he can put it in. Now for a considerable level event, the wording will change, and you'll have more emphasis on life-threatening type of wording in there. So let me zoom in here. So the general format is still the same. It's the 4 asterisk bullets, with the third bullet having hazard source impact in there, information in there. The third bullet is still the basis statement, but notice in the hazard source impact section, you're going to have the wording such as life-threatening flash flooding, and then notice the impacts in here. So the wording's a little different. It's significant and life-threatening flooding in drainage, streams, rivers, and so on. Multiple road closures expected, as well as landslides and steep terrain. So this is it's kind of up the urgency, and it's increased the wording on how significant, and that it's not just your run-of-the-mill flood event. It's take notice, it's pretty significant. So that's when you would use a considerable level event. And then for the catastrophic tagged event, again, I talked about when you use catastrophic tag, it's designated as a flash flood emergency. And that shows up in a couple of locations. And then the wording changes, the impact you're talking about. This is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation. Then it's boldface just to really push the emphasis on it. And in terms of the preparation and preparedness statement, to move to higher ground now, this is an extremely dangerous and life-threatening situation, and so forth. Avoid travel, that kind of messaging. So zooming in a little bit, again, just you're telling people that this is they want to hunker down. It's a really urgent situation that you're talking about swiftwater rescue type event, homes being destroyed, that kind of thing. Just really widespread impacts, and you would save this level of wording for just the really, really severe events. You're talking about your top 5 worst flooding impacts kind of thing. So it's you're not trying to shoot for 1 a year. It's even worse than that. You're talking about really rare events. It's again, if you issue one thing I want to point out too is that you can upgrade these events using the flash flood statement. So in fact, most of the time, and that applies to us here at HFO as well, that in most cases, you're probably going to start out with a base level warning. And then as impacts come in as the event gets worse, then you would use a flash flood statement for an existing warning to transition to a considerable or catastrophic level event, or even designate a flash flood emergency using a flash flood statement, if that makes sense. I'll give an example. So this past March on Oahu, we had pretty serious flooding up on the Ko'olaus and the North Shore. So initially we had a considerable level. Well, it started off as a base level event for the Waikani area, and then the heavy rain just stuck, and then it shifted up to the north, and it just stayed there for several hours. And we're getting a lot of roads closed, and we had a lot of flooding. So we used the flash flood statement to change it to a considerable level event. And then a couple of hours later, the rainfall shifted again, and it sent a huge flood wave down one of the streams that drained into Haleiwa. And it was like record-breaking flow picked up by the stream gauge. And so I issued a flash flood emergency with using the flash flood statement. And so people were able to, the emergency managers evacuated Haleiwa. But that was based on, using a flash flood statement to issue a catastrophic tag event flash flood emergency. And so that started out initially as a base level warning, transitioned to considerable level warning using a flash flood statement, and then went to a flash flood emergency, again using a flash flood statement. So hopefully that makes sense. And we would issue, if you have dams, now I'm aware of only one dam on Tutuila, and it's not used, the one up by Waipito, but I don't know if there are any others over there. And I don't know what the status is on the Waipito, the little reservoir up there, but if you do have a situation there where that dam is at risk of failing, then you would use you would still issue a flash flood warning in IBW format. And it's just that it would be, you would talk specifically about the risk to that dam. Not so, it's not going to be talking about the flooding going on elsewhere. This would be a separate warning just issued for the dam. But again, you know, if you just have the one dam, then it's not going to be very common for you. I'm going to provide some impacts. So again, base level events are kind of, you know, sort of quote unquote routine flash flooding. But you know, you're having isolated road closures, you know, deep ponding, that kind of thing. I mean, it can be dangerous, but it's not, you know, not where it's, you know, really, you know, significant. It's not widespread or anything like that. For us, because we issue a lot of warnings here, and you know, at HFO based on radar, you know, we don't have the impacts yet. We're trying to get lead time, so that's why a lot of it starts off as base. Because if our rain gauges or radar show that are suggesting that you might have you know, significant flooding, then we would issue it in a warning first as a base level event and then transition over as impacts come in. Now, once you get impact reports and you're having, again, multiple road closures or evacuations as a precaution because of rising water, or even people having to be rescued from homes or stranded vehicles, so that would be, you know, the types of impacts that would warrant a considerable tagged event. Again, with the dam failure, you know, it could be just a partial failure and it's not completely failed, so this would be also a considerable level event. Then in the worst case, again, catastrophic level events, you know, multiple swiftwater rescues, homes destroyed, just in widespread flooding impacts, or even a total failure of a dam, total and sudden failure of a dam. And just to reiterate, again, you know, most of the time you're going to start off with a base level and then transition over to considerable and catastrophic events as needed. Thank you. So just to give you more examples, just to provide the type of impacts that we're talking about for the different levels of warnings. So in this picture, we have a home that's been, you know, property's inundated, water's gotten up to the floorboards. So this warrants, you know, a flash flood warning, but you know, there's nothing urgent about it in terms of having to save a life. You know, of course you want to get the water out, so these guys are pumping the water out, but you know, we don't need urgent rescue. So you know, this is a good example of a base level event. And this is another example of a base type event. So you have a highway that's been inundated. It's also one of our more frequent flooding impact sites at Waikane Stream on Kamehameha Highway. So, you know, this road closes a lot, but a lot of times it can be the only impact during a heavy rain situation. So even if this road closes, you know, and you might have to pull, you know, some cars get stalled, it's still, you know, it is fairly routine, I guess you could say. And in fact, in this case, the road hasn't quite closed yet. You know, people are still driving through, unfortunately. I mean, it looks kind of dicey to me, but, you know, this is, the police haven't yet closed this road. Now, once things get more intense, and like, let's say it's not, you know, I had that Kamehameha Highway example, you know, this one, instead of this being the only place, now you have multiple streams causing road closures of the highway at several spots, then that may be, you know, enough to be, you know, worth upgrading it to a considerable level event. You have multiple road closures and maybe some you know, vehicles get stranded, and so people have to be rescued from those stranded vehicles. You know, that would be enough to be a considerable level event. You know, for you folks, you might have, I think, you know, based on the reports that I saw from Gita, I thought that would be a considerable level event based on the type of impacts that occurred. I mean, it was pretty serious, but, you know, I wouldn't say that it hit the catastrophic level, at least from the impact reports that I saw. Same thing, you know, for out in Guam, if you were familiar with what happened with Chata'an, then that I thought was a considerable level event in terms of the flooding. And then catastrophic, of course, you know, widespread flooding impacts, homes being destroyed, like you see up in the upper right. This was our North Kauai April 2018 record-breaking flood event. So this is easily, at the time we didn't have the IBW formatting, but you know, this would be considered to be a catastrophic level event. Hurricane Lane would be another example. Just, you know, long-term widespread flooding, you know, repeated rain bands coming across, you know, over several days. So that would be, you know, we had a bunch of swiftwater rescues going on in Hilo and a couple other places. So that would be a catastrophic level event. And for you folks, I think the May 19th, 2003 on Tutuila, that event would be, you know, I think it would be at the level where you could use a catastrophic tag. You know, you had people that died in that event, widespread flooding, a bunch of injuries, bridges being washed out, a lot of landslides, communities isolated. I mean, those are really big impacts. So that would be the type of, you know, if you want to look at a case study, that would be a catastrophic level event, then that would be the one. So in terms of the formatting, a couple of things. For the flash flood emergency portion, you need to add a location in there. And it can, you know, you don't want to be specific on it. So you folks, it could be just, you could add in the island. So for instance, you know, the Tutuila, that's where the significant flooding would be. And I would imagine that any catastrophic level event for you folks would be pretty much on Tutuila. I mean, I can't think of it being, you know, having that level of impacts on some of the other places. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think in most, if not all cases, it's going to be Tutuila. So that would be you would put that in a couple of locations. So flash flood emergency for Tutuila, and down at the farther down below the third bullet, this is a flash flood emergency, you know, you put in Tutuila in there. Just a little more information on third and fourth bullets. So the third bullet is your basis statement. So this is your indicating why you've issued the warning. So you might be because of intense rainfall that the gauges have picked up, or I think in a lot of cases for you folks, it's going to be, you know, that you've received impact reports, you know, roads closed, landslides, homes being flooded, that kind of thing. You don't want to put model information in there. You don't want to say that a model's indicated. You know, that's more for a watch. For the warnings, you want really short-term things. You know, either impacts that have occurred, or maybe, you know, satellites showing, you know, impacts are occurring and satellites showing thunderstorms moving in, you know, within an hour or two, that kind of thing. You could put those in there, but yeah, you want to keep it to, you know, this is where you put in, you know, why you've issued the warning. And the fourth bullet, if needed, you put specific locations in here, but again, for you folks, it may not be necessary unless you know you have a specific impact information, like, I don't know, highway between Whangatongo and, you know, Whangaitua or something like that. Just you might have more specific information that you can include that in there. But the fourth bullet is technically an optional thing. But For us at HFO and then also in Guam, because we use hazard services in AWIPS, we designate a polygon, and the formatter will pull it'll read one of the WarnGen shape files, the location file, and then it'll pull locations and populate this bullet. But for you folks in Samoa, it's going to be different. So you can put things in here if needed, but again, if it's just you're just putting the warning out for Tutuila, then you can treat it as optional and not put anything in there. Statement. So you would issue a flash flood statement if you have an existing warning in effect, and this is the product that you would use to include impact reports, property damage, road closures, landslides, that kind of thing. Or if you don't have any impact reports yet, you could say that, hey, heavy rain, our gauges have picked up heavy rain, that it's not all safe out there, we just haven't received reports yet. But I think for you folks, it's going to be mostly used as a vehicle to report impacts. If at all possible, what you want to try and issue a flash flood statement for one statement to update the existing warning that's in effect. So for instance, like for us, we issue a warning and it's good for 3 hours. Sometime within that 3-hour period, we want to issue at least one flash flood statement. That's kind of our local policy. I understand that for you folks it may be a little more difficult, so you do what you can. But the important point here is that you can use the flash flood statement to keep the public and your key partners updated on what's going on with the warning, as opposed to you just issue the warning for what's going on, and people maybe wonder, hey, what happened with this? And so you can use the statement to say, hey, these impacts have occurred, or even if impacts have not yet occurred, we are detecting heavy rainfall, or we're seeing more rainfall going to be coming in based on satellite data. And you would use, the other thing that you use the statement for is to cancel or allow to expire an existing flash flood warning. Okay, this is, obviously the AWIPS ID doesn't apply to you folks. I mean, it's not FFS HFO. I missed editing this part out. Sorry about that. But again, you put in the impact information, and as I mentioned earlier, you can use, and in fact, most likely will use the flash flood statement to upgrade an existing warning from base level to considerable or catastrophic. And a lot of that, I had gotten ahead of myself, so a lot of those bullets I had already talked about, so I just didn't want to repeat all that. You want to really, if you have confirmed flooding impacts, that is something that you want to get in there. You want to disseminate that information. But you want to be careful, though, to avoid just reacting to social media reports unless you can have that verified, because sometimes social media reports can be unreliable. But unless, if it's trusted source, and maybe you can put that in, I would just urge caution with social media, because you don't want to have a situation where, get a, Twitter, you have a tweet that shows up and says flooding in this place, and then, it turns out it's not really significant, but then, it's just could cause confusion. So we tend to be pretty careful about, we try to be careful about what to throw in there, not, especially when it comes to social media. Like if we see Facebook or Twitter reports that indicate some type of impact, we contact emergency management folks first, and then try and see if they can get that verified before we actually put it in a statement. Because the last thing you want to do is have conflicting information out there or cause confusion during an ongoing event. So, this is the type of information that is definitely valid for putting into a flash flood statement. You have, somebody reported that, some stream is running really, really high and overflowing its banks or something like that. That's definitely what kind of information you want to put in there. Or, urban flooding, maybe at Whangatongo you have, a lot of water and vehicles are getting stalled, or maybe businesses are getting flooded, that type of thing. You would put that information in there. And again, this goes back to, putting in, you can use the statement to declare a flash flood emergency. So this is the example that I talked about in Haleiwa, where we use the state flash flood statement to issue a flash flood emergency for Haleiwa. So, notice that the product really highlights the urgency of the situation. And in the text portion, you talk about that the stream gauge showed a extremely large rise in the water level, and that significant flooding was going to be expected. Important point is that you can have, I didn't edit this too, a flood watch and a flash flood warning in effect at the same time. So what I mean by that is, like, let's say you're expecting a heavy rain event coming up in a day, so you issue a flood watch, and then the heavy rains start, you get impacts, so you issue a warning, and then that burst of rains ends, and the flooding even recedes. But now, the conditions that created all that unstable air and the risk of flooding, that's still in place. The trough may still be around. Could still be very, very unstable. So the watch can still remain in effect, which covers the larger area. And if heavy rains do start again, then you would issue another warning. So you can definitely have both in effect at the same time. So hopefully that makes sense as well. And this is, for us, it's fairly common situation that we can have both in effect at the same time, because the watch says that, covers the larger area and says that there's a potential for heavy rain. And even though the current bout of rain starts and stops and the flooding goes away, it could easily start up again. So that's why the two can coexist. Flood advisory. So, this is used for just nuisance flooding, minor road ponding or just some stream rises, but it's not coming out of banks and causing an impact. For rainfall data, if you get like 1 to 2 inch per hour rates, that's kind of within flood advisory level. Of course, if it continues forever, then continues for a long time over the same place, then that can result in property damage. But typically a lot of places can handle short duration 1 to 2 inch per hour rates. Similar to the warning, it's updated every 3 hours, but for you folks, the same thing as the warning. If it's okay with your partners, you can keep it out longer than 3 hours. It's not a hard and fast rule that you have to have 3 hours. For us at HFO, it is. We update every 3 hours, but then for you folks, depends on what your local requirements are. This was the flood advisory change. It's part of the HAZSIMP implementation. So your product went to a what, where, when format, and also for Samoa, I think you had a small stream flood advisory, right? That's what it was called, and then it just switched to just straight flood advisory. For us in Hawaii, we've been calling it just straight flood advisory for over 15 years, so nothing changed for us in that respect. For Guam, it's going to change from urban and small stream flood advisory to just flood advisory. So that was the whole reason for the national change. Was across the country, it was something they had like 5 or 6 different types of flood advisories, and so they needed to consolidate that. into just flood advisory. So the what bullet, this would be, it's kind of similar to the watch. I mean, it's just going to say flooding caused by excessive rainfall is expected. Or in fact, I'm sorry, flooding caused by excessive rainfall. I missed this little edit here, because the expected part is like saying it's a forecast, but you know, if you're with the advisory, it's already happening. So it's just should say flooding caused by excessive rainfall. The where for you folks is going to be the affected island or islands, and then the when is just the time frame. Oh boy, I didn't really messed up that slide. It says watch, but it should say advisory. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you're doing too many things at once. Fourth bullet, this will pretty much be the same. You don't need to edit this. Minor flooding on roads, poor drainage areas, and in streams. You know, across the mainland, the rest of the weather service, they'll have variations on the impacts, but I think for you folks, it should just be the same on the fourth bullet. And in the fifth bullet, similar to the warnings, you know, you're indicating, this is your basis statement. You're indicating why the advisory is being issued. So, you know, maybe because rain gauges showed heavy rainfall over the area, or you're getting reports of ponding, that kind of thing. You know, you would put that in the fifth bullet. That used to be in the old format of the advisory. That used to be the third bullet, and then that's now moved into the fifth bullet, which is the additional detail section. So this is an example of flood advisory. So just the leading headline: flood advisory in effect at 3 p.m. Should say SST. I'm catching all these errors now. What flooding caused by excessive rainfall, where Tutuila and Aunuu until 3 p.m. And then the impacts should just pretty much be the same: minor flooding in low-lying and poor drainage areas. And then the fifth bullet, the additional details. This is again the basis statement, so why it was issued. You know, you include reports or just what you're seeing based on gauges or satellite data, things like that. So this is a type of impact. You know, the road's not closed yet, but you know, you have pretty significant ponding over there. So that's, you know, type flood, definitely flood advisory level. Or stream is, you know, running pretty high, but it's still within its bank. So this would be good flood advisory type of situation. So just to rehash, to summarize, we have 5 different hydro products that we can issue, and they have different lead times and uncertainty and update frequency and aerial coverage. So starting out with the longest lead time, but the most uncertainty is the hydro outlook, hydrologic outlook. And then as you get closer to the event, within 2-day time frame, you would go out with a flood watch, but still updated twice a day. Now, let me talk about the update frequency too. You know, I say 12 hours, but it's not like a strict 12 hours. You know, if you can, there is some, you can adjust based on your product cycle. But you know, ideally you'd want to have it out for, you know, update it every, you know, twice a day. Of course, you don't want to wait too long and then go past the expiration time of the product. But the point being that I'm trying to make here is just, it's not, you know, 12 hours exactly. You know, it's just the idea of being twice a day updates. Now, once the event starts, let's say it starts out in just nuisance, you know, minor flooding, then you would go out with a flood advisory. And it's usually on occurrence, update it every 3 hours, hopefully, but you know, you could, for you folks, could be a little bit longer. But if the flooding is a threat to life and property, then it would warrant issuance of a flash flood warning. You try to get lead time, but I know it's difficult for you folks without a radar. So, you know, you do what you can, but you try to get some lead time if possible. Update cycle is the same for the advisory. So ideally 3 hours, but if need be for you folks, could be a little bit longer, and then update the flash flood warning with a flash flood statement. Just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the basis statements, which third bullet for the warning and the additional details section of the advisory. So again, this is where you probably will spend a lot of your time in the composition of the product, and the intent here is you want to provide some added value to the product and tell people what you know about what's going on with the event. So, some additional information on location specifics, or just, if you have an idea of movement trends, or based on satellite data, what's coming into the area over the next, couple of hours, that kind of thing. That's the type of information that you want to put in there. If you do have representative rain gauge information, you want to talk about the rates. The rates are more important than the total rainfall that occurred, because it's really the rainfall rate that drives flash flooding incidents. Not so much the storm total amount, over a day or two. That's less important than the rate, and you want to convey that information to the public. You can use, if you do get impact reports, include that in the basis statement, because that's part of the reason why you're issuing the warning or the advisory, is because you might have already had impacts. You definitely want to include that in there. And it just lends credence. It can highlight the urgency of the warning, especially if you say, hey, this is for real. It's a big time event. Cars getting washed into trees kind of thing, like we had with the Manoa flood. But that's where you would put that information, is in the basis statement or additional details section. On the extensions, if you extend the product, you want to coordinate with the emergency management if you can. Just at least, and we do that here a lot. I don't know how involved in the process TEMCO is with you folks. I know the logistics is a little different, but if you can, just coordinate intentions. Like, hey, we're going to update. We intend to extend the warning. Is that a problem? Or do you see, what are you seeing out there? And we can include that information within the extension, that kind of thing. But you want to give some. You don't want to wait too late to do it, because you want to. Sometimes the EMs might have to call out or radio, the staff in the field, and so you want to kind of give some time for that to happen, and then take that information, relay it to you, and then you can put it into the product. So I try to, when I'm working an event here, I try to give about 30 minutes before the update time, just so that I have time for them to get the information, get it back to me, and then I can actually put it into the product. Now, if for the extensions, again, if you're going to still have flooding conditions, that's obvious. You're just going to extend the warning, but also, keep in mind that the flash flood warning, this is a hydrology product, so that even though the rain stops, but flooding conditions still exist, which can create a hazardous situation, then that'll be, more than enough justification to keep the warning up. So for us here, like we can easily have conditions where the rainfall stops, but the bridge is still closed or inundated, the roads are still inundated. We can use that as a reason to extend the warning, and we would mention that within the product. When we update it, we say, hey, the rain stopped, but Kuhio Highway is still flooded and closed. And what that can do is it can prevent people from, like, let's say in another portion of the island it's not raining, and they say, oh, it's done, event's done, I'll go drive over to another part of the island for whatever reason. But you know, the road at a different part of the island might still be flooded and closed. So, you know, you want to, if the impacts are still there, you can, you know, definitely extend the product. And you know, this is a situation where you can coordinate with first responders, emergency management, and say, hey, you know, what are the impacts, or is it okay to, we can drop the warning depending on what's going on with the road, if they've assessed it to be safe to travel, you know, that kind of thing. You know, coordination, this is really what makes an event successful. If you can, you know, coordinate regularly with your EMs, your first responders. For us, it's at the county level, but for you folks, you know, it's mainly TEMCO. And you know, I don't know what, you know, how your relationship works during an actual flood event, but you know, you want to, at least for us here, our most successful events in terms of, you know, the products and what goes into it and the coordination, it's when we're regularly talking to our EOCs, you know, on the full range of just impacts, or you know, when we can drop a warning or things like that. And then, you know, they can provide information to you that you can include in your statements and then your local storm reports. You know, that will eventually go into storm data. And so that's it. You know, just to summarize, again, the 5 products we have, you know, we've gone to the new HASIM format. So I think so far it's been working out okay. You know, there's some tweaks that need to be done, and I'll work with Eric Jacobson on that. But you know, one thing you want to do in the products is, you know, we want to, you know, like for instance, when we put out a flood watch, you know, it's to notify people that flooding is possible. But you know, in every watch event, there's more to it than that. Like we have additional details that we can provide to the public. So tell people what you know as much as possible, you know, within the realm of you know, what's, you know, in terms of realistic expectations. Just, you know, don't just accept the default output, because you know, it's pretty bare bones what's in the default, and it's, you know, for a reason for that, because there's a lot of variations that can happen in an event. So you know, you want to edit that and just put in what you know. So so I think that's it, and I'll take any questions, or unless Eric, if you have anything you want to
Kevin?
add.
You can go ahead with questions.
Kevin?
Yep.
It's Hans. It's kind of hard to edit it and be away from the default, because we hardly get reports. So that's my take on it. But we'll try to do that.
Yeah, I know for you folks, the situation can be difficult, and so I mean, you do what you can. I know it can be pretty challenging. So
Actually, that kind of relates. Eric had to hop off, but he did ask me to ask. He said he was kind of wondering if there was a way for Pongo Pongo to verify flood events. Like, is it just based on impacts? It could be like specific rain gauge value that would verify, or stuff like that. Any ideas?
yeah, it's kind of hard to verify off of a rainfall total or even an intensity, because there's so many variables that go into it. So I would base it like for us, we never base it off of a rainfall total. It's always based on an actual impact, you know, road closed, bridge washed out, flooded home, that kind of thing. I've never verified a warning off of a rainfall. Stream gauge is different. But even then, you know, like there's only a few that we can tie an exact water level to an impact. But most of the time, we're still gonna, even though we might trigger a warning off of a stream gauge level, the verification time and location is still based on when that actual road closed. So it's all on impacts.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, for the training. It was really good that you went over each product, and it made us understand it a bit more, especially the FFS, because it's usually, for me at least, I just use that to cancel, but for all the other impacts, it's good to know, because we'll get some calls here and there about certain places that always get flooded, like in front of Costulus. I don't know if you remember. That's a call that we'll get usually. A lot of roads, I mean, cars just out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I've experienced that. That was on island.
Yes,
low
right.
spot.
Because when you were here,
Yeah.
when you were here, it was raining.
Yeah, that's a low spot over there.
Yeah.
So,
And they still can't figure out how to
Fix it.
All right, how many engineers?
Yeah, it's the drainage problem that we have over here. But thank you so much, Kevin. I really like how you broke it down to like when to issue it or what is this product used for. Like it really makes it easy for us to consider, okay, which one should we issue now, or which one, what are we looking at? What are we looking for? So thank you so much for that. It's really going to help us. We'll just put it on our cheat sheet, make it our cheat sheets, just to refer back to it. But
yeah, it's one thing to do the trainings online, but it's another when, you know, you kind of focus it on us. That's why when we asked about like one of the canned messages for the what, like, oh, is there any other? Because, you know, but you focused it on us. So really, really helpful.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Yeah, I mean, and if you have any questions, of course, you know, just let me know. And then next month, I think December 19th or 17th or whatever that date is, I have it on my calendar. You know, we'll do the tools and techniques thing. I mean, I know it's a challenge for you folks. Like for us, it's heavily radar based and stream and rain gauge, but you know, there's challenges in those regards for you folks. But I'll try and put some things. I have a lot of it done, but initially we were going to try and put it all in one, but then I realized pretty early on, it's like, oh, this is way too much information. And based on the time now, I'm glad I broke it up. So
Perfect.
Yeah. So is the next one, will it be geared more towards using or what to look for on the AWIPS? Like
honestly, you know, like model data, satellite data, and some things. I mean, you probably could. You may know a lot about all of it already, or even teach me what's useful. But I'll just put together some things that I'm hoping might help, and just maybe at least set up a discussion for it or something like that. You know.
Yeah, I think that would work really well for us too when we go over that, just so that we know, okay, what are we looking for on AWIPS, on the satellite? Are the conditions there?
Yeah.
That kind of stuff, yeah. So thank you, and we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, looking forward to tomorrow.
What's that?
So we're looking forward to tomorrow.
Oh. Wait, what's tomorrow?
Wait,
I'm missing something.
Tomorrow, sorry.
Next month.
The next month.
Next month, okay.
The next
month.
tomorrow
What's going on tomorrow?
It's a test.
Dora's holding a party tomorrow.
Okay, I'm going to be in Molokai tomorrow, so I was thinking, am I missing something?
Oh, nice. My bad.
All right.
I guess I can just wrap up by pointing out some of the AWIP stuff really quickly. I don't have much to add, so if anyone has questions for Kevin, that's more important.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah.
With cart.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin.
Let's see, it kind of depends on if I can be presenter. I don't know if Leanne, if you're there, if you can make me presenter. If not, I can just.
Yep, hold on.
Okay.
Hey.
All right. Okay. Are you all seeing this screen? This is the PowerPoint. It's basically the images that I shared by email. I just want to take advantage of the fact that this is being recorded, and if anyone hasn't, I know Pongo has already issued some of these products, so I think you all are pretty well aware of where they are. Since this is being recorded, it's a great chance to highlight that what we did change was basically in your GFE products, we do have the same menu as before. The hydro menu now includes the updated FFA and the updated FLS, and those are in this graphic highlighted in red. Right, WWW is kind of the short form of like the what, when, where that people have been referring to as SIMP with. So the gray products did not change at all. So that would be your flash flood warning and the flash flood statements. So those were already updated to IBW, and those haven't changed. What I did with the old products, the FFA and the FLS, they're all in the legacy hydro menu. And if that's just confusing to you, we could take those out at this point. I think those probably aren't ever used, and they really shouldn't be used. Here's just a quick example of just what the products look like. If you hadn't seen them, basically, as you all have pointed out, there are quite a few more fields, these red sort of tagged text, framed text areas to edit. And here's where I want to say that, a lot of stuff has already come out of this conversation about, now that we took a new look at some of these things to update the format, there is a lot of stuff that, Kevin and you all have pointed out that can probably just be put in. And so I want to just, let you know that I'm very open to doing that. And I think it sounds like you all have a lot of ideas in a spreadsheet already. So, hopefully, even though there's more stuff to edit, we can, with this fresh look, we can start to maybe pre-populate some of this stuff. And that's going to be kind of the direction going forward in the big picture. Once we figure out a way to get hazard services working for Pongo, whether that's in an Amazon cloud machine or some other way, there's a lot of there's a lot of layers to the code there that help pre-populate a lot more text than what you have had to deal with. So you guys are doing a lot of work. And we recognize that. So, but in the meantime, if there's any things that we can pre-populate in terms of, locations, for example, if you tend to just have, I don't know if location is just usually the same thing as the islands that are in the header, like Tutuila and stuff like that. We can pop those in so that it's less editing for you, or you have a better starting point. So yeah, I sent these out with the initial email letting you know that the formats are ready, but I just wanted to have this here in the recording so people were aware of what has changed. So are there any questions about the AWIPS part, or really Kevin's the guest of honor, so if there are any questions for Kevin, we can definitely go back to that.
It looks good, Eric.
Okay, yeah, it's really whatever you guys feel like is helpful to your workflow or could be improved. That's an open dialogue always, so you know where to find me.
Eric.
Hey, Hans.
Eric, yeah, I think what you said about the location was good. Can default on that. I don't know, but Dora, Jay, Nathaniel, and the other guys.
I think it's okay. I mean, you have the Tutuila, Manua Swains at the top, so I think it should be defaulted to that. And then when we do issue the one for just Tutuila and Naunu, it should have just that for the where part, I think.
Okay, yeah, because you're not usually doing complicated wording like, northeast Tutuila.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you don't have to try to figure out, okay, where?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think because then when you do Tutuila and Aunu, then we can zoom in on the villages that where the reports are coming from.
Okay. Yeah. I can I can start, taking a look at some of these and how easy they are to just sort of pre-populate, and I'll probably leave them as the red text just so you know that it can, it needs to be proofread, but yeah.
Okay.
Good idea.
Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, and definitely share it. I'll send an email. We can start a conversation about some of those pre-populated texts that you have in a spreadsheet. That sounds really, really useful. So. All right, that's all I had. Not as much, not as important as Kevin's stuff. So I don't know if anyone had any other questions for Kevin.
All important, Eric. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Appreciate it.
Okay, I mean, I don't have anything else. So I guess if you didn't have anything else for me too, then we'll just wrap it up. Sounds good. Okay.
All right.
See you folks next month, and thanks, Leanne, for setting this up really fast and recording it. So I think we can turn off the recording now.